Just trying to see if this service is better. Am I able to, can you X out and look at my channel and see if there's a second video?
Good. Hey folks, just wanted to give you guys another little update. Right now we are under 15 minutes till launch time. 15 minutes till launch time. Nothing has changed. We're still on time for launch at 11:06 a.m. So as you notice, it is getting a little bit tight in here. If you can find some room, feel free to just grab a seat if you need to on the grandstands or down on the AstroTurf down below. If you need to stretch even further forward into the grassy area as well, just please do not go past our lovely security person, but you can also sit in the grass if you need to, if it's starting to get a little bit too tight. So right now we are under 14 minutes till launch time, 14 minutes till launch time of Galaxy 31 and 32 on our Falcon 9 rocket from Launch Complex 40. So the big question of the day, besides is the rocket going to launch, is where do I look? So everyone, if you can turn and take a look towards that SpaceX screen. Now I want you to start looking to your left. You're gonna see 3 traffic lights and then a big telephone pole. The electrical pole, that is the general area you wanna be looking at. That is the direction you're gonna see the rocket launching from. All right, folks, so look over near that electrical pole. That general area is where you will see the launch from, no matter where you are sitting in the grandstands, on the ground, behind me, to my right, to my left. All of you have a great view of the sky.
Nice launch trajectory countdown net. Head is clear.
10, 9, 8.
Launch auto sequence has started.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2,
Go for launch.
Vehicle is supersonic.
Stage separation confirmed. Dragon, separation confirmed. Stage 1 is transonic. Landing lights are deployed. And Falcon 9 has landed.
Good morning. It's Saturday, November 12th, and you're looking at a live view of Falcon 9 awaiting its 11:06 a.m. Eastern Time launch from Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Welcome to our live coverage of the Galaxy 31 and Galaxy 32 mission for our customer Intelsat. Today's launch marks our 190th mission overall to date and our 52nd launch this year. Now, my name is Shiva, and I'm a space operations engineer here at SpaceX, and I'm joining you today from our headquarters in Hawthorne, California. Today's launch continues Intelsat's Galaxy Fleet Refresh Plan, which started with Galaxy 30 in 2020. These assets will provide continuity for C-band media services serving North America. Now, both the Galaxy 31 and 32 satellites were manufactured by Maxar Technologies and are scheduled to enter into service in early 2023. Here's more about the payloads we're flying on today's mission. We're just about 7 minutes away from liftoff, so let's get to know a little bit more about the launch vehicle. Now, the Falcon 9 you see on the pad is a two-stage rocket designed and manufactured by SpaceX for the reliable and safe transport of both payloads and people into Earth orbit and beyond. Now, as a reminder, Falcon 9 is the world's first orbital class reusable rocket, and reusability is important because it allows us to refly the most expensive parts of the vehicle. That in turn is what allows us to drive down the cost of access to space. Now, the entire vehicle stands 229 feet tall. That's slightly taller than the towers of Westminster Abbey in England.
Stage 1, RP1 load complete.
The bottom 2/3 of the vehicle is called the first stage. It's also known as the booster. Now, its job is to accelerate the vehicle from the pad through the Earth's atmosphere into space, and then it'll separate from the rest of the rocket. Today's booster is flying for its 14th Dragon's first crew demonstration mission, the RadarSat Constellation mission, Sirius XM-7, and 10 previous Starlink missions. If you look closely at this rocket, you see that we don't have any landing legs here or grid fins, in fact, on this first stage, and that's because we won't be attempting to land this first stage today. Today's normally use for recovery, and so we're going to be using that propellant to take the payloads to orbit. Now, moving up above the first stage, we've got our second stage that has a single Merlin vacuum or MVAC engine that ignites shortly after the first stage will separate. And it's the second stage that will carry the Intelsat Galaxy 31 and 32 satellites to orbit. Now, the payload for today's launch are enclosed inside the 17-foot diameter payload fairing, which is that the second stage. It's made of a carbon composite material, and it protects the satellites as we make our way to orbit. We'll jettison those fairing halves approximately 3 minutes into the flight, and both of those fairing halves are flight proven, having flown, both of them flying for their 5th times. We'll be attempting to recover them after separation on a recovery vessel named Bob. Now lastly, that large truss structure next to the vehicle is called the transporter erector, or the TE. We use it to roll the rocket out to the pad and raise it to its vertical launch position.
Auto has started.
Now, the TE routes vehicle fluids, power, and telemetry from the ground systems to the rocket, and that continues until Falcon 9 switches over to internal power and clears the pad. Now, you might be able to see it there. We've begun to open the clamp arms around the second stage. That's in preparation for transporter erector retract. And that's where the TE will begin to slightly back away from the stage to clear the way for liftoff at T-0 hydraulic systems. At T-0, the hydraulic systems will actually pull the TE further away, clearing the way further for Falcon 9's liftoff. And you can see there the TE making a small angle with the first stage. You also may have heard some callouts there that we've begun pressurizing the stage in preparation for TE retract. So we began pressurizing the system. We use a helium pressurant on Falcon 9 to pressurize the tanks. Now, at this point in the countdown, we are nearly fully loaded with about 1 million pounds of RP1 fuel. That's a type of refined kerosene.
Stage 1, let's go complete.
And liquid oxygen on the vehicle. We just heard the call out there that liquid oxygen loading is complete on the first stage. We'll hear a similar call out for liquid oxygen loading complete on the second stage. The Falcon 9 uses rocket propellant 1 as its fuel and liquid oxygen as its oxidizer. An oxidizer is a type of chemical that a fuel requires to burn, and we chill that liquid oxygen significantly below its boiling point. That allows us to load more mass per volume into the vehicle and get more propellant and performance out of the rocket. Now, in addition to both the RP1 and liquid oxygen, we use a chemical called TTEB, triethyl aluminum and triethyl borane, as an ignition source. When we combine those two chemicals, they produce a hot flame and ignite the RP1 and liquid oxygen to make the rocket go. Coming up, we're about 10 seconds away from liquid oxygen loading complete on the second stage. With that call out, we will be completely loaded with propellants for flight.
Stairwell. Tell Gary to get him off the stairwell. The fire escape.
Stage 2, lock flow complete.
So with that, we are fully loaded with propellants in preparation for liftoff. We'll see some venting up here. And just a quick status update, both the payloads continuing to look healthy, weather 90% go. It's a beautiful day at Florida today for that on-time liftoff. There.
Now, folks, I do want to let you know there is going to be a delay with the live feed with the countdown clock. So as you can see, there's about a 20-second difference, folks, a 20-second difference. So go by the clock on the left side. Do not go by the clock on the feed.
Internal flight computers will take control of the countdown. That's where Falcon.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
So from here, the launch team will provide their final go for liftoff.
LD, go for launch.
So with that, the launch director giving their final go for launch.
Last 30 seconds.
30 seconds to go. Let's watch as Falcon 9 takes Intelsat Galaxy 31 and 32 to orbit.
Fifteen seconds. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, And liftoff of Intelsat Galaxy 31 and 32. Go Falcon 9. Vehicles pitching downrange. MLD chamber pressure normal.
Successful liftoff of Falcon 9 from Space Launch Complex 40 at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. We're carrying the Intelsat Galaxy 31 and 32 payloads to orbit. Now we've just begun throttling down the Merlin 1D engines in preparation for maximum dynamic pressure. And we've also begun to tilt the engines. That's called gimbaling. And that's why we've begun to move horizontally away from the launch pad. That maneuver is called a gravity turn.
Max Q.
So call out there for max Q, that's the point of maximum aerodynamic pressure. And briefly going back to the gravity turn, we are still heading up, as you can see. Also heading away from the launch pad. And we do that because a rocket needs to go about 17,500 miles an hour horizontally in order to avoid being pulled back to planet Earth. So we'll keep speeding up the vehicle to get to orbit. Now coming up in about a minute, we've got 3 events back to back. That is main engine cutoff, followed by stage separation, and then second engine start number 1. Main engine cutoff is where we'll shut down all 9 of the Merlin 1D engines on the first stage. That's in preparation for stage separation, where the first stage will push off the second stage. And then second engine start number 1, where we'll ignite the Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage. So again, MECO, main engine cutoff, followed by stage separation, and then SES-1. And gotta love those beautiful views. This is a view from the first stage camera, looking down the body of the first stage towards planet Earth. You can see the Merlin 1D's plume expanding as the density gets less and less.
I saw one putting up the sky. Oh no, you see the panhandle right there. That is so cool.
MECO. Stage separation confirmed. Impact ignition. Stage 1 MTS is saved.
So what's separating exactly?
Awesome. So MECO, stage sep, and second engine start complete.
Now, folks, I do want to thank you all for joining us here for our viewing area at the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex. As a reminder, this rocket will not be returning today. This is an expendable rocket. They are throwing it away. It will not be returning on the barge off the coast. So that about does it here, folks, for us at our launch viewing area. I want to thank all of you for joining us and have a great rest of your day.
Do you guys know what expendable means?
Behind the Merlin vacuum engine.
But does it mean like it's gonna stay in space and just?
Bearing separation confirmed.
But I mean,
So there is successful fairing separation. We'll be attempting to recover those fairing halves in a recovery vessel named Bob. You can actually see one of the fairing halves in frame there as it goes back to planet Earth. We actually got our first glimpse of the payload as well today. As a reminder, we are not attempting landing on our first stage. So the next major milestone will be second engine cutoff number 1. That's about 4 minutes from now. And again, the reason we're not attempting to recover our first stage today is because today's payload needed a little more performance out of Falcon 9.
Right.
And so we had to use the propellants that we would normally use for the entry burn and landing burn to instead take the payload to orbit.
But the engine and the satellite are at one.
The very top of the...
That's super cool.
Did you just record it?
Now, the first of these 2 burns is taking us into what's called a parking orbit. So that is a roughly circular orbit that we'll be going into before we take a second burn later on in today's broadcast. And ultimately, the payloads will be going to what's called a geostationary transfer orbit before they continue their mission onto geostationary orbit.
Why are you taking...
So for this first burn, the Merlin vacuum engine is continuing to burn and take the second stage and the payloads to orbit. Now, the Merlin vacuum engine is extremely similar to the Merlin 1D engines. It does feature more redundancy and a much larger expansion nozzle, and that allows us to maximize the in space. And the reason that expansion nozzle makes the burn more efficient is because we're able to expand the gases further on the ground. On the ground, pressure from the atmosphere pushing down on us. And so as you try to expand the gas, you have atmospheric pressure. And that means you can't get as much push out of the gas out of the nozzle. Contend with that. And so we can actually get more of the force out of the expanding, and that increases the efficiency. And Merlin Vacuum operates with the highest efficiency ever made for an American hydrocarbon rocket engine. They made a note. Stage looks very similar to the first stage. It doesn't just look similar, it has the same dynamic position in the tanks, the same and almost the same engine. And that allows us to use similar tooling, design techniques, and systems to build two rockets that are more reliable. Anything that we learn on the first stage often applies to the second stage. And now, if you're just joining us, welcome. You're watching our webcast 132 mission. You've got a view of the second, along with planet Earth behind us. It's in to a 5-minute burn. We had successful liftoff, stage separation, and second engine start, as well as fairing separation from Space Launch Complex. And we didn't attempt to recover our first stage for additional performance to get our payloads to orbit. Now we're currently awaiting second engine cutoff number 1, or SECO 1. Coming up in just about 20 seconds from now.
Terminal guidance. Stage 2 FTS is safe.
Connected loss of signal, Cape Canaveral.
Oh, this feels good.
And back shutdown.
Juju, enjoy.
SECO 1. So now the teams are going to be evaluating the orbit that we're in. Make sure that we're right on track.
Nominal orbit insertion.
And with that call out, we are in a nominal orbit. Again, this is the first orbit. It is a parking orbit in preparation for our next event. And since we didn't attempt to land our first stage today, the next major milestone will be ignition of our Merlin vacuum engine again. That's for second engine start number 2, expected in about 26 minutes. About 26 minutes. Until then, please enjoy the space tunes and the views from space. We'll see you back at about T+26.